It's not a take.
Grant's already
It's a
unleashed this.
fact.
Grant's
it is
already,
a fact.
We're doing it live, Grant. We're having an opening. You've already unleashed the worst take. Hopefully, your takes don't get any worse than your pre-show takes and are arguing about cartoons for whatever reason. Welcome to oh geez, I forgot the whole spiel. Grant, you want to do the intro? Grant, you do the intro. Have at it.
Hey everyone, Dean doesn't know anything about cartoons, but that doesn't matter because we're here to talk NBA. We got a nice little however many game slate where however many guys are going to get ruled out and change things around, but it doesn't matter because we're going to be giving you the advice all the way up and down the show. SPK is going to come on. We're going to be answering questions all over the place, letting you know exactly what to do, letting you know possibilities that you need to watch out for before things go down later on in the day. But don't worry, crunch time's there. We've got Cheese, we've got Meansy, we got Roth, so we got baseball, basketball, both covered, and the weather, which isn't applicable to NBA, but that's what we're talking about right now. Dean, go ahead and get us started.
Every once in a while, weather, we saw the Smoothie King Center had a leaky roof a couple of years ago, and the New Orleans game was rained out. So I wouldn't say it's not applicable, but as a general rule, we're not really concerned with weather. You did mention Kevin Roth, chief meteorologist, talking to baseball later on. It's a crossover, dual sport crunch time tonight. You mentioned Scott Cheese is good. That's Dave Potts, two-time millionaire winner, along with Meansy. They take you guys all the way up to lock and then some. In between that, this is the basketball show. We'll talk basketball in a second. We're going to do our absolute best to give you guys dynamite basketball analysis for what might be some shenanigans going down. We're still almost 3 hours until the first game at 7 o'clock on the East Coast. Just one of the 9 games start at 7. We'll talk body parts in a second. Plenty of dudes are questionable as far as tonight. Chalk Detroit Pistons on a 9-game slate is something I'm not comfortable with. We're going to have to talk about that because they actually have a lot of guys out. They're only down to 10 bodies. Which, we've seen them run like 13-man rotations. We'll talk about the Pistons in a second. They're missing a lot of people tonight. Hey, basketball promo. If you guys are still grinding basketball like we are, 5 days. We did this for baseball, so running back for basketball. 5 days, $5 as far as RG premium content. That gives you the lineup HQ, the player projections, the premium Discord access, correlations, the situation room. It tells you about the body parts, who's in, who's out, and how that would affect the correlated players, defense versus archetype matchup tool, means you score plays, the grind down, the consensus value rankings with myself and Grant, amongst others, partake in the expert survey, ownership, slate IQ, crunch time. By the way, pro tip: if you just want to get the a la carte sport, I think right now you can get. Correct me if I'm wrong, Devin, our producer, am I here? If you're just signed up for baseball or basketball, you get the crunch time that has both, right? I assume there's no way of kicking anybody out for the crossover crunch time. So there you go. Pro tip: if you don't want to fully commit to all the sports, of course, if you guys want to get all the sports, you get $10 off your first month. You got a link there and chat for the people, or just a la carte, one sport, $10 off your first month, same deal. You did mention SBK from our projection team. He's gonna be coming on about 10 minutes or so and helping us sort out all the questionable dudes and what we may be on alert for when the news does eventually break. I'm going to hit one more refresh one more time here, Grant, in the hopes that we get some new information. We don't, but all right, Grant, you're comfortable? You ready to hear who's in and who's out tonight? Because it's a long list, man.
Oh gosh, can I just go take a nap?
I mean, you might as well. I'll finish it. SBK will be jumping on, so you got a good 15 minutes to just chill if you want. From parts unknown there, and this is which office is this of yours, Grant? This is your fancy office or your casual office?
This is my Southern Colorado office.
The Detroit Pistons tonight are without Jeremy Grant. He's got a quad. They got to rest Mason Plumlee. Corey Joseph's he's got bronchitis, so he can't play basketball tonight. Wayne Ellington's got a rest too. Sekou Doumbouya's got a rest. No, he's got a head, so he can't play. Dennis Smith Jr.'s got a knee, so he's out. And Magruder is out with his elbow. 10 live bodies for Detroit tonight. Indianapolis, stay tuned in this one. Domantas Sabonis is questionable with his back. Miles Turner's got a toe. He's got 10. One hurts. He's questionable. Jeremy Lamb's questionable with his knee, and McDermott's questionable with his ankle. Washington, Rui Hachimura is out with his knee, and Alex Len is questionable with his ankle. Birthday boy. How about this, Grant? 22-year-old Lou Dort on his birthday is out. He's not playing. No narrative street. He's got a hip.
There is a narrative. He probably partied.
Well, okay. You think he was partying last night?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
all right.
Why not?
I don't know. Have at it, man. Enjoy yourself. Lou Dort, he can't play with a hip. Isaiah Roby's got a toe, so he's questionable. House is out for Houston, as is DJ Augustine and Sterling Brown. Larry Nance is out for personal reasons. Miami, This one is a mess as well. Some value really could open up. Bam Adebayo is out with his knee. Goran Dragic on the back-to-back is questionable potential rest. Iguodala's got a hip, so he's questionable, an old hip at that. Tyler Hero is out with his foot. Oladipo is out definitely. And Jimmy Butler, one of those, if he's in, it's going to be his show. If he's out, Kendrick Nunn.
Even if Butler does play, like we could still play Nunn, I think.
Yeah. And like Dwayne Dedmon can be kind of sort of somewhat interesting as far as the slate as well.
He can knock down some threes.
He's a big dude. They can grab some boards and bang some threes, and he might be able to get there just in 20 minutes. Pretty good fantasy point minute guy. Boston, Jaylen Brown, not feeling particularly well. Despite that, he's expected to play. He is probable. Two other players are ill. Walker and Smart, both questionable. Robert Williams, a Time Lord, is out with the knee. Fournier is still out. Ben Simmons also not feeling great. He is questionable. Toby Harris is questionable with his knee. Seth Curry's got a hip, so he's questionable. Dwight Howard's got an old knee, so he's questionable. And George Hill has a thumb, so he is questionable.
And you could cut body part time down to like half if you just say Simmons, questionable, Curry, questionable, Harris, questionable. Boom. Instead of saying questionable with a, so he's that. Be more directing.
Then it wouldn't be body part time. It's just these are the guys who are injured or may or may not play.
Yes, because of body parts. Is illness body part?
Yeah, that's the full body part. Yeah. Bronchitis is what? Is that lungs? What body part is
that? Lungs and throat. Yeah, potentially. Most of the time, the infection is in the lungs, but yeah, it does affect your throat, does affect your vocal cords, does affect quite a few things.
I think somebody had bronchitis that I noted earlier, but Corey Joseph, I believe. Golden State, Steph Curry is questionable. He's questionable. He does have an ankle. Oubre has got a wrist, so he's questionable. Toscano Anderson has a head, so he's not going to play. He dove over. I don't know if you saw, he made a nice little save, but now he's not going to play, at least for tonight. Pascal out with his hip. Jonas Valanciunas is out for, I think, protocol reasons. That could be an interesting one because Brandon Clark is also questionable with his hip. So, we may be really, really thin as far as the front court for Memphis. Stay tuned in that news. DeAnthony Melton has a leg, so he's questionable. Brooks is questionable with his thigh. Zach LaVine still out. Donovan Mitchell still out with his ankle. Ersan Ilyasova downgraded to doubtful with his hamstring. Monte Morris is out with his hamstring. Of course, you all know that Jamal Murray is out for the season with his knee. That's a big bummer. In Denver, I thought you guys had like a legit shot to make a run. I say you guys.
Still think we do.
I hope you do, but I don't think so. That's not the way it works in the NBA sometimes.
Why, you have three superstars? You can't make a run?
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to replace. You can't just, Facu Campazzo is not exactly a comp.
Yeah, he's not exactly a comp, but look at it. I mean, I'm not comparing Jokic to LeBron, but LeBron made it pretty far into the playoffs without multiple of his stars on the team. Like MBJ's a stud. Gordon's a great role player in that offense. Jokic is one of the best players in the league. Anytime you have one of the best players in the league, you could potentially make a run.
All right. So 9-gamer, Grant. General rules, like the teams that are fully healthy are less appealing. We'll see how that goes going forward. As far, again, there's so many questions up in the air. It's hard to say things that are definitive. But speaking of Denver, Jokic, for me, is the premier piece on this slate. And I assume we can figure it out and make that work because there are presumably going to be a ton of value plays. We'll talk about Detroit in a second. I know you were talking pre-show about Embiid, and I was talking about Westbrook, and it's like, the way Westbrook's been playing of late, out of his mind. You want those quote-unquote guaranteed points from the big spends, and those two feel like the safest for me, Jokic and Westbrook, and just kind of like make it work and figure out who's in and who's out and just plug in the value plays. That's like my general thought as far as this slate. How are you going to make this thing, this 9-gamer, pretty imposing, but how do you make it smaller? What are you isolating?
I mean, what am I isolating? I mean,
what are you zooming in on?
I don't know at this point. What am I zooming in on? So the only things you really can isolate are the clear, cheap value options that still may not be that clear. And then the spend ups. Like, that's really what you can do. You can't really play too much of the mid-tier. The only mid-tier option I'm really looking at and we'll be looking at regardless is Michael Porter, just because the guy has a huge ceiling on any given night. It's a little bit of a way to differentiate yourself. People are going to be playing Jokic. If you play Jokic and MBJ, they actually have a positive correlation. They have a decent matchup. It's all about if that game ends up staying close, but luckily there are some appealing, cheaper options and could be a whole lot more cheap options opening up later on for Memphis, depending on who ends up playing and who doesn't end up playing. It could give a big bump to a lot of guys. Hopefully that game ends up staying close, but people are going to be using jokers. So a nice way to differentiate and something to focus in on that you can build your lineups around, change other pieces, is by making lineups with both MPJ and Jokic, and maybe throw Westbrook in, depending on what value ends up opening up. But you want to make a lot of, or some lineups, because so many things can change unless you're just straight up putting in an optimizer and rolling out lineups and doing mass player swap that way. If you're building things by hand, which I know you have a tendency to do sometimes, it's good to look at the certain situations that are going to be unchanged and may get a big bump up or a big bump down based on things, and things that you can change to a little bit degree. So yes, you kind of talked about it earlier on the show and kind of talked about it right now. Putting in the big spends and then mixing and matching all the cheap guys is going to be the interesting part, because there's not a ton of areas where big spends are going to be that affected. Like obviously Butler's a massive one. If he ends up playing or not playing, that affects him 100%. Potentially Philly with Simmons, Harris, Curry. I don't know, that could make things more interesting. That'll probably drop the line a decent amount, make this game be closer. Obviously Curry in on the other side. Like that game is something that could be interesting to change around based on what information comes around with the big spend ups. But outside of that, it's like Brown and Tatum get a bit of a boost if Walker and Smart are out. Brogdon, LeVert get a pretty big boost if Sabonis and Turner are out. Butler, obviously. And then I don't even know what to expect with the Lakers and Utah game. I'm probably just staying away from that, to be honest, just because I think it's going to be a blowout, and I have way too many different possibilities that I would have to mess around with. But predominantly the spend ups are pretty stable here in a few games that are going to be ones that I'm going to be focusing on regardless. So it works out nicely.
Yeah, general rules, but that Laker Utah game is the back half of the ESPN doubleheader. The first half is the Golden State game. I don't want to say for that reason, but I just expect Steph Curry to play tonight. We'll see. Stay tuned on that. But I assume he's going to play on ESPN against Embiid. And I don't have the knowledge or like the stats in front of me, and I feel like that's something I could probably find. But I feel like, at least in my head, that Embiid's like one of those guys that likes to shine on national TV. And like, why? I mean, they're probably going to throw Draymond Green on him to some extent, Looney on him to some extent. No Wiseman obviously out for the year, but there's no reason to think why he couldn't like drop 40 points on Golden State. And yeah, they're 9-point favorites, but assuming it stays fairly tight, I do like Embiid as a pivot or even like a game stack if Steph does play. Well, let's hold off that Detroit game and still SBK. He's going to join us and he'll sort through the Pistons because that's a big old mess, but it's something we have to talk about. And we finally have a limited roster for Detroit down to 10 dudes against Cleveland there. And, you know, the prices are reasonably cheap depending on where you're shopping. The Utah thing, general rule, if one of the studs is out, all the other guys, because they're condensed rotation, become a little bit more interesting. The tricky part here, Grant, is that the prices have adjusted on all of them. Like Conley's more than he has been throughout the season. Ingles has, more expensive than he has been all year. Same deal with Clarkson. Same deal with Bogdanovich. Gobert kind of sort of about the same. So he's probably like the best dollar for dollar, I suppose, if you're going to play one of them. But how do you feel about that Utah side? It sounded like you're just sort of not waving the whole thing, and I guess they're going to blow him out. But in theory, when Mitchell doesn't play, there should be some usage to go around. But again, everybody's kind of been bumped up where it's almost not that appealing, even though.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Like, again, that's a general rule, but when time passes long enough, the algorithm catches up and all these guys get priced up, it becomes a little bit less appealing. I mean, realistically, the only guy that has a safer rotation and safer minutes and safer everything is going to be Clarkson, because he is running with that second unit. He is getting that usage off the bench. So his rotation's a little bit more static, constant, whatever, consistent's the word I was looking for. But like, they just don't fit in to my builds. Like, I'd rather not take a shot on Clarkson or Bogdanovich or Ingles at their current price tags, because they're priced where they should be. The matchup is a potential blowout, even though the line's only sitting at 7 points. Like, I'd rather look elsewhere for bigger upsides. Like, they're all around 7K or 6K, and I can pay up a little bit more for MBJ. Yes, depending on what value ends up opening up. Yes, multiple guys at the 4.5, 5K range end up opening up as great plays. Then that kind of means the 3.5, 4K guys aren't as appealing, and you kind of have to drop down one of your guys if you're still going to pay up for those big spend ups. But as of right now, yeah, they just don't really jump off the page as great plays right now at their current price tags.
And to your point, on the other side, with the prices adjusting, no Braun and no Brow, And still, like, none of the Lakers look particularly appealing. They're all second. The matchup's obviously not great, and usage goes around, but the prices have all adjusted. Where is there any Laker that gets you excited tonight? Not really, right?
No.
All right, let's bring Keach on. We kind of teased him earlier. By the way, chat, what up, chat? Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Do appreciate that. Devin's going to go ahead and compile all your questions in chat. Do fire off some questions that we're going to help you build your lineups tonight. Well, this guy or that guy, this game stack, who you crossing out, how heavy are you in this team, yada, yada. If you want to have game theory questions, feel free to fire those off as well, too. Do specify if it's for tournament, if it's for cash, if it's for super draft, FanDuel, DraftKings, wherever you guys are playing. We'll do our best to answer those questions. End of the show. Keach, SBK, what if I feel like we haven't talked in a while? A, and B, is this the calm before the storm? Because a lot's going to go down soon enough, right?
Yeah, I mean, this day's been kind of a nightmare. I mean, it's like I looked through the situation room, just like there is just a sea of questionable players. There's so much stuff up in the air. It's Monday afternoon. Like the NBA is just not trying to let us live.
4 more weeks of this, Keach.
Crazy.
4 more weeks. It's going to be ridiculous.
It's going to be a shell of a human being by the time that
ends. Book a vacation or something in a month or so. You're going to need it for sure. So we held off on Detroit. I don't want to talk about the Pistons. I want to talk about them about as little as possible. I was like, let's let Keach talk about the Pistons. Get me excited about all these dudes that are not great, but they should play enough, so they should be interesting, and they kind of make things work in theory as far as the slate tonight.
Yeah, this was one of the teams that I think was one of the tougher ones to project initially last night, just given how down they are, and obviously the fact that a handful of these guys are surely going to pop, and that is the case today. Isaiah Stewart, he's got the four little buttons there on Mlb HQ, so clearly somebody that's appealing to a lot of people. We have him projected for 31 minutes, a little bit under a fantasy point per minute, but would expect that as long as he can avoid foul trouble, he should play pretty much as many minutes as he can handle against a pretty big Cleveland team. So I think he's probably the best option on the Detroit side. Killian Hayes might have the highest ceiling, although it's still probably Stewart there. But Hayes, I mean, obviously was a pretty dreadful per minute producer early in the season before he got hurt, and has since come back and been a little bit better for the most part. He still had some games that are kind of down performances, kind of relative to what we saw for him early in the season. But 36 fantasy points in about 27 minutes the other night. He had 35 and 25 minutes against OKC in early April. So he can do it. And he's, pretty cheap. So I think it's probably those two are the safest options. And obviously Sadiq Bey, Josh Jackson, both have, considerable mid-range appeal, but I don't think either of them are necessarily safe.
You mentioned OKC. It's weird because OKC is without Dort. They're without SGA. They're without somebody else too. I just sort of lost. They're missing multiple players today. They're facing Washington, which is a great matchup, and yet none of them are really popping. None of the prices are great. Like they're not terrible. It's so strange. Are we ignoring OKC? Is that a mistake? Or basically the problem is everybody plays, 27, 20, 23, 29, 30 minutes. And that's like, they're all just going to sort of get there, but not surpass that. What are you doing with the Thunder today? Because I'm confused.
I think your last point there was pretty accurate. I mean, none of these guys are playing like a ton of minutes. And I mean, I honestly kind of expected more people to sit tonight. I thought that they would also rest Baisley here. Potentially somebody else. So I'm kind of surprised they actually have as many bodies as they have right now. I figured Dort would definitely sit. Maybe Moses Brown. I mean, he didn't really play much the other day or yesterday. 24 minutes. So, I mean, he's obviously on the GBP radar, certainly has 40 fantasy point upside if he plays 28, 30 minutes. So him maybe, I mean, maybe Baisley, just given that there's obviously no Dort's going to lead to more shot attempts, but I'm a little bit nervous about him as it is. So I think maybe Moses Brown. It's probably about the only guy I'd be, kind of itching to roster tonight.
What is the biggest thing we're monitoring? Is it Butler, Miami? I mean, Dragic, if he doesn't play, if Butler doesn't play, Hero's already out, Bam's already out. Is that the one that can change the most? Boston's got several guys that are ill as well too. Like, what do you think the biggest piece is? Is that the two biggest moments that we're kind of watching right now, or maybe there's a secret door number 3 that we're not even aware of what's going to happen?
I mean, there's a number of situations. Boston's obviously a pretty big one. Kemba and Smart both questionable. So that, if both those guys were to sit would change the landscape of Boston quite a bit. On the Miami side, I kind of think Butler is going to end up joining these guys on the inactive list.
Wow.
Not quite as comfortable with Dragic and Iguodala in terms of making a call there, but I do think Butler probably sits. And obviously that would, with no Bam would send the Heat into a tailspin pretty much. We'd have completely different numbers than we do now. I'm not actually 100% sure if we have a what if up for that or not. I know we've still been working on them. I think there's a Steph Curry one on the way very soon. So yeah, if not, check that pretty soon and we'll have one up there. But yeah, Miami would change a ton. I don't even really want to get into like trying to analyze who would benefit, given there's still like 3 other questionable guys on the team. And yeah, Golden State obviously as well. Curry questionable, Oubre questionable. Would be a lot to change there also.
Indiana,
so,
we can't run them all down. We can't hold you hostage the entire show. But Grant, you got anything for SBK before we let him go? Because we can't ask him about every single team, because that would be just SBK running down the if-then the entire show.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's basically covered everything, and there's a ridiculous amount to digest. So, no, I think you did a very good job, SBK. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Grant. There is a lot to digest today, that is for sure.
Yogi Ferrell is signed with the Clippers. Good for him. There you go. All right. One more Clipper to get ruled out right before lock. Thanks for your time, SBK. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Stay tuned. News will be dropping soon enough. Grant, give me your take as far as the Pistons. We kind of delayed them, but if you can sort of prioritize your favorite, I guess it's Stewart. FanDuel does us a favor by throwing him a power forward, makes it a little easier. So you can get Stewart and Jokic, Stewart and Embiid. You don't have to make the decision.
Cheaper over on FanDuel.
Yeah, and also the scoring system favors the way he plays too. So
yeah,
with his stocks. So yeah, he seems like a really, really strong player there. Can you power rank your Pistons? And how many is too many Pistons?
I mean, power rank them depends on site, but DraftKings, it's Hayes, it's Stewart, it's Jackson, then it's Frank Jackson, Josh Jackson, then Frank Jackson, probably Saban Lee. Bay probably right after that. But how many Pistons is too many Pistons? I don't know. It depends on what opens up on the rest of the slate. If then a lot of value ends up opening up, because there's literally a potential 15 guys that could be ruled out that could potentially throw another 15 value plays in there. So it's impossible at this point to really figure out. I think Stewart, no matter what, is very much in play and a very good play over on FanDuel, and Killian Hayes, no matter what, is a fantastic play over on DraftKings. He's been playing fairly well since he came back from injury, averaging over a point per minute. He should get at least 25 minutes with the potential for 30. He's been playing really well. He's priced way too cheap. You can play him on any side, but I think DraftKings is the best spot to play him at, considering his salary and considering positional scarcity and considering what other options you have on the slate. So Hayes is number one regardless, and Stewart is number one over on FanDuel regardless, and everyone else just kind of becomes a play in tournaments based on what ends up happening on the rest of the slate.
I think there's a scenario where Kendrick Nunn becomes like the best play on the slate. That. I think that's possible.
If Butler gets ruled out, I'm pretty sure that just happened.
Butler and Dragic, like Dragic in the back-to-back, and it's Houston, so who cares? They're only like 6-point favorites, 6.5 is what I'm seeing, at least scoring the RG page. I don't have the official Vegas stuff, but I imagine the team totals essentially correlates with that. I mean, if Butler was playing, you'd think the line would be a little higher. I know there's no Bam out there. Houston does have John Wall back tonight. Oh man, and none, like you said, none is fine either way, especially if Dragic is out, with the Bam being out. So, and there are plenty of bodies in that Miami side. Like they have, Gabe Vincent and Strus. They're not going to give him a ton of run. And Iguodala questionable too. Who knows what he's going to be doing in the back-to-back. We haven't talked about Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's playing basketball tonight, and he's usually really good. But I think he's behind Jokic. I know it's a different position, obviously, but what's your official Giannis take tonight?
He's behind Jokic. He's behind Embiid for me, and he's behind Westbrook.
Yeah.
That's basically it. He doesn't make the cut for me. I mean, you don't it's not really a spot where you really want to game stack. I don't really think Paul or Booker end up being good plays. Their total is pretty much right on par where they've been at the entire season. It's not an easy matchup going up against Milwaukee. Everyone's kind of priced how they should be. So the game stack kind of goes out the window, and Jokic is just Jokic's 20th percentile outcome is probably the same as Giannis's 60th percentile outcome. And yes, there's going to be a little bit of a disparity between ownership in those two, probably pretty drastic. But the floor on Jokic is just absolutely massive, considering what he's been doing lately. Without Jamal Murray in the offense, Jokic is just such a better play. And so I don't really have any desire to play Giannis, just because I'm essentially giving up a solid 8 to 10 points on average over the course of time for a spend up, which is something you generally don't want to do a ton. Yes, basketball can happen a whole bunch of different ways, and any number of things can happen, but Giannis isn't coming into this game in very good form. He has been playing great over the last several outings, and I know he was out for a while, and I know he hasn't played a bunch of minutes, but this game could potentially end up being a blowout, just like everything else. But in blowouts, like recently, especially over the course of the last 2 months, in blowouts, we don't always see Giannis get there. In blowouts with Denver, I mean, we just saw Jokic put up 65 points in 26 minutes because it was a complete blowout going up against Houston. In the matchup between Denver and Memphis, like, are we really worried about Tillman or potentially Clark really doing anything to stop Jokic? No, they have to. Jokic has to do something. Giannis doesn't have to do anything. Like Giannis, they could probably still compete. I know it's a tough matchup versus Phoenix, but they could still potentially compete with Giannis putting up a 45-point game. Like that's very easily in the realm of possibility. And they could blow out Phoenix with Giannis putting up a 45-point game. So
it's a bad matchup. I think the counterpoint would be it's high and it's tight. 233 total.
Hero's upgraded to questionable.
Oh, okay. Well, Hero could become the best player in this slate. All right. Well, why does that happen? Like, why? What is? I don't know.
I think that Butler's not going to play, and they're now more likely to rule Butler out and Hero to play.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, and Hero would become. I haven't checked Hero's price because I just ruled him out. Yeah, he's 5'4" on DK. How much is Hero on FanDuel? Because he can be a really strong play. This is fabulous internet television. So Hero is. I got to actually go on the site now because he's not even listed in the players available. How much is Hero on FanDuel? Do you happen to have that in front of you?
No.
Well, you know what? I'm going to type it in and I'm stalling for time. Hey, he's 4.6 on FanDuel. So, like, yeah. He's 4.6 on FanDuel. If he plays, I assume he's available to play 30 minutes and just crush at that price. Hey, chat, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. If you didn't like those last 35 seconds or 40 seconds of us searching Tyler Hero, his price on FanDuel, hit the like button, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, fire up some questions. Devin, our fabulous multitasking producer, is compiling your questions. He's gonna ask them on your behalf. Tournament questions regarding the slate tonight, cash questions too. Tell us what slate, and we'll make it happen for you guys. So we join us in about 5 minutes or so. The Pacers, how much do we care about the body parts that are up in the air there? Because in theory, Sabonis being questionable, Turner being questionable, McDermott being questionable, Lamb being questionable, that should matter.
It should matter. It does matter, but not to a huge extent because there's we don't know if it's how much it's going to matter based on what other things happen. Like obviously LeVert and Brogdon are going to have to carry the brunt of the workload for that. If both those guys end up going out, there's going to be an uptick in minutes for a whole bunch of other guys if that ends up happening. So like it's kind of hard to break down at this point. Like just know that there's a pretty big bump for LeVert and Brogdon just because they increase in usage. I think Indy's been one of the fastest paced teams involved on a ton of high scoring games over the last month. And I don't think that's going to change regardless of what ends up happening. So you have to assume that both those guys have a pretty high ceiling if the other two guys end up getting ruled out.
If Walker and Smart sit tonight or one of the other Boston's own like Utah, like the general rules are the general rules, but more so than other teams like Utah, like Boston, if one of the two of the studs are out, everybody gets elevated. They're not a very deep team. Like you're not thinking about like Ojale or Pritchard so much. What sort of effect are we looking at if Walker or Smart happen to sit tonight?
I mean, I think it's like I'm still probably avoiding things a bit over on Boston just because there are better plays that are going to end up happening. But if Kemba's out, like it's obviously a decent bump for both Tatum and Brown. Do they make the mix as one of the best plays on the board? Probably more Brown over on DK than anything else. Like if Kemba's out, then like Smart gets an upgrade. Smart's out, Kemba probably gets a little bit of an upgrade, but like do they end up being one of the better plays? Like their GPP darts is basically what they are. I mean, now it's a match versus Chicago, and if Kemba and Smart both get ruled out, that game likely stays closer. But do we really want to play Brown or Tatum instead of going up? They
become more appealing. I think they become more gets put on their shoulders, and like their chances of reaching that 55, 60 point fantasy threshold, the percentage chance of doing that is greater than if the other two guys are around.
Yeah, no, it's definitely greater, but I mean Tatum, I'd pretty much just cross Tatum off for the most part. He's fine. he's not great, but over on FanDuel, he's 9.7K. Over on DraftKings, he's 10K.
Yeah.
Like Brown is definitely the more intriguing option at 8.4K over on DK and 8.3K over on FanDuel. Because, I mean, in theory, Tatum obviously has a little bit higher of a ceiling, but Brown's put up multiple 55-point games over the last month. If both those guys are out, match versus Chicago could potentially end up happening. But I probably will just stay away from Brown and from Tatum and probably just play Brown a little bit sparingly.
No Valanciunas tonight. You talk about Tillman as like a defensive. Like, well, is he going to be able to stop the Joker? No, of course not. But he's 3.5K on FanDuel. He's super cheap on DK as well. 0.9 fantasy points per minute. Brandon Clark, a fantasy point minute guy as well too. Clark is questionable. Tillman could become like a super cheapie in theory, but Memphis does have like a fair bit of guys. Winslow, who knows what Winslow's going to do or not?
Yeah, we don't know because so many does have a fair bit of guys. Well, what, 5 of them are questionable?
I'll tell you what, if this game stays close and like nobody likes playing Kyle Anderson, certainly not at the price he's at, but we could see one of those like 9, 8, 9. He's like a poor man's Draymond sometimes, and he gets like 3 or 4 stocks as well. And I mean, I'm not saying maybe like it's a little run back in a tournament. I don't hate that, especially if some of the Memphis guys are ruled out. But are we interested in Tillman? Our thoughts as far as the big men there? They're just is dependent upon.
Tillman's going to get some run, and I mean, depending on how many guys end up getting ruled out from Memphis, if this game stays close, like you can throw Tillman and you can throw MPJ and you can throw Joker in and you can throw Anderson in at just 6.2K, 6.3K over on FanDuel. And he's a guy that like if he plays 35 minutes, he can put up a 45-point outing. Like it can absolutely happen. We saw earlier on the season, he had those random outbursts because he does stack every single part of it. And matchup versus Denver, I think, is potentially a spot where he could end up doing this. So he's definitely a guy that's in play based on how many guys we get ruled out and a guy to differentiate yourself. Because not many people are going to go over to Anderson if all those guys are ruled out. Like it's probably going to be mostly the smart players. So his ownership is going to be a little bit suppressed from what it actually should be. And if that happens, like, and he plays 35 plus minutes, that game stays close. Like I said, everyone's going to be playing Joker. No one's really going to be bringing too many stuff back over on the Memphis side outside of maybe Tillman just as a potential price saving. But depending on when we end up getting that information, the ownership could be greatly suppressed for a lot of these Memphis guys that actually become pretty decent plays and potential good plays because of the bringbacks.
My other question about Detroit and how many Pistons or too many Pistons was also like it's the only game at 7:00, and for sure there's going to still be some stuff in the air coming 6:30, maybe 7:00, maybe an afterlock, and you don't necessarily. I don't like to lock up a spot unless I feel really, really good about it. And like there's some good stuff and there's some good math stuff on Detroit, but I don't know how much of it I need in order to kind of make everything else work, especially if something's fall later on that are just good or just as good or close enough as good. And it gives you some versatility as far as building lineups. Just want to note that. Do you want to entertain the Curry? I just think Curry's going to play. I mean, that's just my mind. Maybe I'm wrong just to assume that. I just assume he plays tonight in ESPN. Do you want to entertain, like, what if he's out?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
I don't want to entertain it either. I just think he plays.
I don't know. Well, there's an easy way to do this. Let's look at the what if for if Curry is out.
Is that one actually built? Do they actually? Because there's so many to make these days. I don't know if they made one for that. They probably did.
And then Nico play. It becomes an interesting value play.
Oh, Nico Mannion. No.
Yeah. Like the guys Wiggins, Oubre.
Well, he's questionable too.
Yeah. So, I mean, if Oubre gets ruled out, gosh darn it, this is so darn confusing.
And they become much less efficient too. So, like as far as usage or whatever, Draymond is better with Curry because Curry
I don't want to play Draymond if Curry's out. Like I don't want to play him at all if Curry's out. And I mean, even playing him right now, I don't want to play him right now, depending on what ends up happening. Because like I assume that there's going to be a lot of value that ends up, and yes, Draymond could put up a big night, but he's priced right around where MPJ is at, so I don't really want to play him. Regardless, yes, he can have a pretty big ceiling. It's not a particularly great matchup, although matchups don't really matter too much for Draymond. But if Curry's out, like I have no interest in playing him. Like it's a big downtick for him.
Draymond's going to be on Embiid, and he's be talking some stuff, and who knows? Like I'm not here to predict technicals. But I can see something going.
I feel like there's a few guys over the years that you've like that's been a legitimate where it's like I don't want to predict injuries, but Anthony Davis for the last 4 years, you never know if he's going to go to the locker room.
The Lakers have a new AD that keeps going to the locker room these days as well. I was going to bring Devin on. He gets his appropriate 15 minutes, but I punished him a minute or two because he would not take my side pre-show, and he knew in our argument that I was 100% correct. I don't know why.
How are you correct? You named like 3 different scenarios afterwards.
This is the worst thing to bring up. This is just going to derail all the discussion.
Would you want to talk about the role of hypothetical? Like, what if this guy's out? What if this guy's out?
I mean,
what if that guy's
you're talking about the hypotheticals of if a guy that got into a fight with the refs is going to get in a technical foul tonight. He's not even playing against the refs, and he's fighting them.
What's up, Devin? Are you compiling questions on behalf of the chat?
I have been. We've got quite a few today, so we can go ahead and jump right in if you guys want.
What are the rules? Is Grant doing tournament stuff, I presume?
Let's do that. Let's do Grant does tournament. Dean, Cash Savant over here. Starting off with Bryant, who was adamantly wanting to know what's the best team stack today. So we're going to start off with a question that is not specifically for one or the other.
A team stack. Well, go ahead. I mean,
I guess
Detroit
that's tournament,
the answer?
Yeah. Denver, I love the Jokic Porter stack.
So 2 players can be a stack. I'm not saying that sarcastically. I think that should be clarified, right?
Yes, 2 players. Like if you're looking for a 3-player stack, we have to wait and see what ends up opening up, because potentially, I guess, over in Memphis, you could have a full team stack of 3 players with Morant, Anderson, and Tillman, which, I mean, you don't generally want to use a ton of salary on team stacks. It's more about like, all right, getting some high-priced guys with some underpriced guys. And so in Denver, both MPJ and Joker can go off for a massive game. But generally in a place like Brooklyn, you don't want to use both Harden and Kyrie in the same spot. So it all depends on the day, the team, what's open. So team stack, like 2-man team stack, it's MPJ and Joker. Outside of that, I have no idea. It could be Miami if Butler ends up ruled out. Yeah, you can use Nunn. You can use Hero. You can use any number of different guys. I don't know if Hero's going to play, but there's going to be so much usage to go around. The price tags don't fully reflect it without Butler and Bam in the lineup.
I love that Dean got the answer to that, and he's just immediately looking for a hair to start splitting. So two-man stack.
No. I actually wasn't. I thought it'd be clarified, because when people ask about stack or talk about stack, it's good to be specific in the brain. Sure. I think it's important to note, like, you can have a 2-person, like, you can have a game stack, in my opinion, like Booker and Giannis. It's like a game stack, like tonight, like that. To me, that's a game stack. Like, it's only 2 players, but it's also the 2 studs, and it's also important to note how much salary is being delegated to that game stack too.
I think the salary and then the overall slate surrounding it, those are sort of factors you should definitely keep in mind when you're planning your game stacks.
Yeah, because I think some people hear game stack, I got to put 3 on each side. Like, no, you don't have to do that. You can if the situation calls for it. I don't think it does tonight, for the record.
All right. Keelan here in chat wants to know, playing the FanDuel Express contest. So that's the first slate of games, right? First few games.
It's like the middle or something.
I think it's like the 7:30 and 8 games.
If you want to pull that up, Grant. Who are your top plays from Chicago and Golden State? And then who is the best center option for that contest between Embiid, Vooch, or Thompson?
So, Grant, it's just 2 games. It's Chicago, Boston, and Golden State, Philly.
Okay. So the top center option is Embiid. What was the other part of the question?
What are the top plays from Chicago and Golden State?
I mean, I don't know right now. If Smart and if Kemba gets ruled out, then Brown is probably one of the top plays. If Steph ends up playing, I think that Draymond's a very good play. Steph's obviously a good play, but Embiid, Brown, probably. Again, that also depends on who plays for Philly. It's impossible to answer at this point. But based on the entries, if Kemba's out, it's Brown is one of my favorite plays. Embiid is one of my favorite plays regardless. I like Embiid for that if it's a bigger field tournament. I like Draymond if Curry ends up playing.
Kobe White's the best cheapie there, for the record.
Okay. I was going to ask if you could touch on Chicago as well. Andrew wants to know, what's your lock bet of the night? You guys got anything ready for today?
What are we wagering on tonight, Grant?
I mean, I'm all baseball pitcher props right now, but Danny Duffy's at 5.5 strikeouts over under, and he's at -110 juice over on BetMGM. I hammered that for the most they'll let me, which really isn't not. And if you really want to, just straight up arbitrage, you guys. If you're in a legal state, you can go put 550 down on the over and then 480 down on the under over on DraftKings. It's a plus 120. -120 over on BetMGM for the over. So arbitrage situation there, but I don't care. I just put all my money on the over because Duffy's going to easily hit it.
What's the Musgrove? Is it 7.5? Do you know what Musgrove is?
Musgrove's at 7.5. It's different between each different site. 7.5 is pretty much what I have him pegged at, and there's not really plus odds on any of the. He's going to hit the over half the time. He's going to hit the under half the time. Musgrove being at plus 105 would be my favorite over on DraftKings, but everywhere else I think it's negative juice on both sides. So wouldn't suggest hitting that one at all.
I think he goes over for the record. Go ahead, Zevin.
I was going to say, while we're on Grant's bread and butter, Andre in chat wanted to know if you had any people standing out on Super Draft for tonight. Have you taken a look at that?
Super Draft, the absolute lock button play of the century of the week, as Carl would say.
That long, huh?
Is Embiid. Like, Embiid's 1.3x. That's just, just silly.
That seems wrong.
Just absolutely silly.
Somebody fat fingered at Super Draft. Christopher wants to know Saban Lee or Killian Hayes.
Hayes.
All right. John wants to know DK. Is it smart to lock Hayes, Stewart, Jokic, and Russell Westbrook?
For DK?
Yeah.
It's not smart to lock. You can lock in Jokic, Westbrook, and Hayes. Stewart, I don't think you need to, especially depending on what ends up happening with Butler in that game, because Stewart's at 5.3K over on DK. You can lock him in over on FanDuel, but on DK, you don't need to lock him in. You can potentially get a lot better options over the Miami game.
And now this next one comes from yours truly. This obviously, with was it Hero getting upgraded just a little bit, it's going to have an effect on this. But I saw that on FanDuel, Jimmy Butler is projected to be 70% owned. What? I mean, obviously that's going to change, but that seems insane.
I mean, because you have the salary.
Is it just that bad of a position today, though?
And there's no Bam.
Okay.
Yeah, you have the salary. Like, Butler can easily get a triple-double. It's about price. Like, obviously, it's about price, positional scarcity. So Butler being 9.3K, small forward position. We look at the other good plays on the slate.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're basically playing MPJ, Bogdanovich, Butler, or potentially Kyle Anderson if those other guys end up getting ruled out. Outside of that, like,
you got Bay, 5'2" is okay.
I was going to say 6.
Yeah, Brown is fine if Kemba ends up getting ruled out, but right now we're under the assumption that he's playing. So everyone's going to play Butler if both Smart and Kemba end up playing, because Brown's not that good of a play. If Butler plays and those other two guys are ruled out, I'm guessing Brown's ownership's probably going to go up 15%, 20%. Butler's will probably drop down 15, and then it'll get spread out a little bit less throughout the rest of the guys.
All right. Well, I think we adequately touched on that one. Lonnie wants to know on DK, do you like anyone from Houston if you consider Butler could be out?
Not really.
Olynyk revenge.
Yeah, Olynyk's basically the only guy I was considering playing regardless of Butler. I mean, if you really want to, on DK, just not really.
Wood's fine. Like, he's fine. You don't need it, but it's fine. It's a good secondary play. No?
Who?
Christian Wood.
It's fine, but not really good. Like, it all depends on, like, I would drastically rather play Brown if Kemba is out. I'd rather spend up on one of the studs. I'd rather spend slightly down on MPJ, who I think has a higher floor and a higher ceiling. Like, realistically, my thoughts on MPJ is 50% of the time he's going to outscore Woods 70th percentile. So the ownership isn't that drastically different, and I don't see Wood putting up a
60% of the time it works every time. Is that what I heard?
You got to spend.
Would you play
money.
Jokic and MPJ in the same lineup without running it back with somebody in Memphis?
Yes.
You just play those two and you're good.
Yeah, I mean, It's not like, I mean, potentially it depends on how many guys end up playing for Memphis and how many guys are ruled out. Like, I'd probably in most lineups will end up playing Tillman, but that's not really a correlation. It's just because he's the cheap value right now. Like, it all matters if this game ends up staying close. It's a 7.5-point spread. MPJ and Joker can both end up getting there in the case of a blowout, and both of them can end up crushing if this game ends up staying moderately close and they have to get run in the fourth quarter, which is more likely to happen with MPJ than is Joker. Joker being at roughly 40% ownership means that if Joker doesn't put up a great outing, it's not going to hurt you that much, and MPJ getting run in the fourth quarter like he occasionally does could end up still being beneficial.
All right, we got just about 3.5 minutes. Let's go into a lightning round here. Andrew, FanDuel tournament with Jaylen Brown playing. Is Jason Tatum even worth being in the player pool? Dean says no, I know.
Wait, is he officially in? Or am I confused? Who is he asking about?
He was talking about Jason Tatum. Or with Jaylen Brown playing, is Tatum even worth being in the player pool?
Oh, is he worth in the... I mean, no, Grant was just saying that you can't... Like, he's in the player pool, sure. Like, if you're running 150, I guess, but...
I know Dean's stance. No Boston players if they're healthy.
Probably not. Yeah, but
I mean,
Walker
Tatum's
and
a
Smart are
little bit
both
more
out.
playable over on FanDuel than he is on DK, but I don't really have interest in playing either of them.
All right. Russell Westbrook, lock of the night.
No, Jokic is
first.
Jokic. Christopher asks, Embiid or ABC?
Embiid.
Andrew asks, is Teo Maledon worth a spot with so much other value at point guard FanDuel tournament? And is OKC a good value as a pivot from Detroit?
I mean, it's all right. It's not great. Maledon hasn't been great lately, but his price tag has dropped because of that. So I'm still not playing him just because that game could end up being a blowout really easily. It's a 13-point spread. I don't have a ton of interest, and they can just play all their guys all over the place.
Have they been favored by 13 all season? Washington's favored by 13 points tonight. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it seems like a huge number. That's the Wizards from Washington, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Going up against OKC, a team that's lost 10 straight.
Yeah, I know. It's just weird. That's got to be the biggest spread Washington's had the entire season.
A lot of
I
bodies.
mean, they
missing
might have
from
played
OKC.
Houston earlier on.
Scammed You wants to know, FanDuel tournament, do I spend down on both power forward spots?
I mean, Stewart is pretty much a lock and load over there. So, yeah, you can do Stewart and Tillman very easily.
King
You can
Moses.
spend up on Sabonis or Giannis. And yeah, the whole Tillman situation, Tillman's still minimum on FanDuel, 3.5K. If you need something in the middle, I'm okay with Kevin Love. I don't need Kevin Love, but I think he's fine. He should play about 28 minutes or so, give or take, with the absence of Nance. But, lightning round. Go ahead, Deb.
Kevin Love, who has launched himself back into relevance.
Yeah, good for. I wish he was on a real team.
Good
Yeah,
for Kevin
him.
Love. Good for Kevin Love. You love to see it. King Moses wants to know, FanDuel tournament shooting guard with most upside.
FanDuel tournament. Sorry, I'm moving over to shooting guard mostly.
Beal's good price at 8.5K, Grant.
Yeah, it's probably Beal. I honestly, DeMar DeRozan is probably. I would rather play him just because Indy's been playing at such a ridiculous pace and been horrible defensively recently. But it could be LeVert if both Sabonis and Turner are out.
And Hero, again, is what, 4.4 or 4.6. If things fall his way, he could be fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher wants to know, FanDuel, Kevin Porter or Brown at small forward tonight?
I'm forgetting which Brown.
This is why Jimmy Butler is really popular. Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, Jaylen Brown.
Oh, yeah. If Kemba's out, Brown.
And we'll end on King Moses. FanDuel tournament, favorite value to hit 7X tonight?
Well, I mean,
over on FanDuel, it's Stewart. Over on DK, I mean, it's probably none, assuming it's probably none. If Butler gets ruled out, if he doesn't, probably Tillman.
Stewart with the rainbow dots. Oh, and we got one more. Chilico wants to know, FanDuel tournament, Steph or Russ?
Russ.
Oof.
Yeah, that's and I would assume that's presuming Curry plays.
Yeah.
Hey, what if you're playing Embiid? It's still Russ?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. You can play. You don't have to
I know.
generally
I'm
stack
just
it up.
asking the question.
Whoa.
Well, some people out there think, well, I have to play. I have to run it back. I got to run it back. I was told I got to run it back.
At this point in the season, you with all the mispricings, you don't have to run things back.
Now, when you say run it back, do you mean one person on the other side?
Devin, I would explain more, but we're out of time.
We are out of time.
We got Derek Hardy, the chief CEO there of the back, coming up, along with Stevie TPFL. One more time, remind you guys.
Did you say chief CEO? That's redundant.
All right, ATM machine. So Crunch Time follows them at all the lock. If you guys are premium members, you guys are not premium members. Why are you not premium members? Get yourself premium $10 off the first month. Just one sport, all the sports, however you want to do it. For basketball specifically, $5, 5 days, all the good you guys get as far as the content here. We ran it down earlier. We have no time to get into it because we are up against the clock. Baseball's on deck. That was Grant. That was Devin. Thanks for asking questions. I do appreciate that. It makes the show much more fun. Do hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. Stay tuned for baseball. We're out of here. Out. Peace, kids.
I play a high price pitcher, what can I not do with my bats? If I'm playing two studs in basketball, well, what's the downside to that? You're always weighing positives and negatives of like, if I do this, how does it affect these other four things? So to me, that's lateral thinking. And in DFS, so many people think linearly, where they're like, okay, it's a 6-game slate. Should I stack 5-1-1-1? Should I stack 4-3-1? It's like you're thinking too linearly. You could stack them any way you want. It's just depending on what you're looking to do. There may be some 5-3 stacks that are fine, that are equal to 4-1-1-1-1 stacks. That may have two cheap pitchers. That may have like all these other decision points that you're making affect one another. So, James, I know this is not something we necessarily talk in the course specifically. I mean, when we talk about roster construction, I mean, it's essentially this. You have to think of your lineup as a whole. Lineups, not players. But how do you get more in the mindset of thinking laterally rather than linearly?
It's kind of a hard thing to explain. I think that it comes with a lot of experience. First off, I think that like after you have done something so many times, you don't have to think so much about each individual moving piece, right? So after you've built an NBA lineup, 10,000 times, like you don't have to think individually about, well, where am I going to get my value? Well, if I play this guy, then what does it mean about this position? Blah, blah, blah. After you've played so many times, you just kind of look at the slate in general, you look at the projections, and then you build a lineup and you look at it and you're like, oh, well, I guess I ended up on this super cheap small forward. I guess that's where I might have to be punting. With baseball lineups, I think that a lot of people think very, very linearly in that they want to say, okay, well, I have to start with this pitcher. And then I have to start with this outfielder. And like you start with those things, and then you kind of, I think people get anchored into that. And that is something that we talk about in the course is anchoring, and you'll anchor to a certain thought or a certain player. And if you're thinking linearly, then like you said, you make one decision and then you forget about it. Well, if you've made the decision that you want to play Bieber and then you forget about it, then you lock yourself into the decisions that you have to make in order to afford Bieber, instead of thinking, it's a total lineup where maybe you can't afford Bieber if you want to be able to do the other things that you want to do with the rest of your lineup. So I think that a lot of it just kind of comes with an understanding and experience of building lineups over and over and over again. And the main thing that I would say in that is when you build a lineup, like build the best lineup that you could possibly think of. Like forget the salary cap for a second. Build the best lineup that you can think of and all of the things that you want to do, and then look at it and say, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to build the best lineup that you want to be able to build, and you're not going to be able to afford it. So then you look at it and then you try to think about it and say, okay, well, I'm going to restart and I know that I can't do all of that. So then, cut one thing out and then try to rebuild and just build a whole lineup over and over again. But never get anchored in and say, I want to do this one thing, because that one thing might stop you from being able to build a good lineup. Like that one good thing of, you want to be able to force in the Yankees. Okay, well, now you're stuck playing Julio Teheran and Chris Flexen. And it's like, are the Yankees going to put up 40 runs? Maybe, but like your pitchers suck. So you'll get locked into these things if you think too linearly. You really need to be able to make all those decisions and look at the slate and look at your lineup as a whole. And I think the best way to do that is to just build a lineup, see where you end up, and then keep trying to build lineups that are kind of cutting things out here and there.
If I play a high-priced pitcher,
everyone, welcome to the MLB Grinders Live. I'm Stevie TPFL. It's Monday. It feels like Monday, and this slate is like a Monday slate. I'm joined today by the creator of the bat, Derek Carty. What's happening, Derek?
Not much. How's it going?
I mean, it's Monday. What else could be going? Like, and it's 6 baseball games. Like, we have definitely gotten like some of the easier slates to kind of break down this month for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, man of so many words today. Derek Carty. Listen, this slate's super interesting because, was it 2 weeks ago we were on here and we had like I think a 6 or 7 game slate and there wasn't like any pitching options. Like we have a ton of potential pitching options that could pitch well on today's slate. So I think in cash games, it's pretty clear where I think a lot of people are going to go. But in tournaments, I feel like there's so many different ways you can go on the slate.
Yeah, I definitely think there are plenty of options here. The bat has like, I think 5 or 6 guys between projected like 17 and 19 points. So there's a lot of not like high end pitching, but like decent pitching on this slate. So you can definitely get a little off the board, I think, in GPPs.
What's up, YouTube chat? Make sure you guys, if you have any questions, fire them in chat. Devin will keep track of them and we'll answer them towards the end. I'll give out a bet here in a few minutes for the person that just posted. What's up, Tony? You ask all the time. Hopefully we've been crushing those best bets for you. Also, if you're over there watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. Make sure you guys get that notifications turned on. That way you get these videos as soon as they pop up and take advantage of it. So Derek, let's start with pitching. We've already kind of talked about it a little bit. I think there's a couple clear ways to go as far as cash games go. And I'm sure you're with me on the first guy we're plugging in is Joe Musgrove.
Yeah, Musgrove is far and away the best option tonight. Someone in the bat chat earlier said they thought they saw that he might only go like 90 pitches tonight. I haven't seen that anywhere. Have you?
No. Yeah.
I mean, I don't see why they would necessarily do that to him. Like I know he had the no-hitter semi recently, but he's the most talented pitcher on this slate. And he's facing a Milwaukee Brewers offense that, while underrated, is not especially great. They're still an average to below average offense. And they project as the most strikeout heavy offense on this slate. We don't have an official lineup yet, but the projected one has quite a few Ks in it.
Yeah, like you just look up and down this lineup, and with Yelich out, and Yelich is even striking out at a high clip, since the start of last season as well. But with Yelich out, this lineup isn't scary. So this should be a spot. Okay, so even if he goes 90, I think even if like that is a real thing, I haven't seen it, and I don't see why that would be a thing because he has a start in between like his no-hitter. But like he's had his normal 5 days, so I don't think it will be a thing. We'll see. If it's 90 pitches, it's still Milwaukee. There's still a ton of strikeout upside. He could put up plenty of fantasy points. My question for you is because you play a lot more cash games. I don't play any cash games in baseball anymore. Like, what are you looking at for like SP2 as far as cash games go?
I don't think there's one obvious guy that you have to pair him with as your SP2. I think there are probably 3 or 4 options that make sense that you can do. So, it's really going to depend on roster construction and just kind of how it works out. But I think the guys that are pretty much in consideration for me would be Danny Duffy, Kevin Gausman, and Dylan Bundy. They're all in that like 7K-ish range. They're all in fairly good spots. And, and they all have pretty long leashes. I know like there will be people maybe playing Dustin May. What's the ownership look like? Oh, maybe not. Okay. Bundy, Duffy, Gausman are the next 3 after Musgrove. So yeah, I really think those are the 3 guys. Bundy's facing the Rangers. The Rangers are a bad offense. They're just not very good. It's not a great pitching environment here, and Bundy can get lit up with the best of them. So there's definite downside here. I wouldn't mind a Texas stack, especially if Bundy is going to be pretty chalky. but I think Bundy's an option for cash games. I think Duffy against Tampa Bay. This is a less strikeout prone Tampa Bay offense than we were expecting, I think, today. A lot of times Tampa Bay has like one of the more strikeout heavy offenses on the slate. That's not the case today, but Duffy's still a decent pitcher. Duffy still can go deep into games. And this is the best pitch and weather of the night here in Kansas City. So I like Duffy quite a bit. And I like Gausman. The back half of this Phillies lineup is a little bit watered down. I guess they have some, I don't know, injury or COVID issues or something going on. But this is a pretty strikeout heavy version of this lineup with a few kind of holes in it. And Gausman is just underpriced for who he is. Like it's a tough park. It's Citizens Bank. It's a home run park, but Gausman's like a legitimately good pitcher and he's 6.6K. And so that's just too cheap because of just who he is.
Yeah. Just kind of shifting gears here a little bit, just kind of looking at these other top end options. Like a lot of people are going to be trying to play Dodgers bats on the slate, in my opinion. I think they're going to be pretty popular and for good reason. Best offense in baseball. But what do you think here about like Dustin May? I have so many reserves when it comes to any Dodgers pitcher, but I have a ton of reserves when it comes to Dustin May in general. We saw last time out, got into a little bit of trouble in that fifth inning, and like he was at like 70 pitches, and they're like, "You're done."
Yep.
What are your thoughts when it comes to Dustin May on this slate?
I mean, that's my concern every single time he pitches. He's always overpriced for even though he's like talent level wise, a 9K pitcher, he doesn't get the depth. He doesn't get the pitches and the innings that he really needs to be a true 9K pitcher. The matchup tonight is great. He's facing Seattle. It's a bad offense. It's the second most strikeout heavy offense on the slate after Milwaukee. But how deep is the guy going to go? Like he can just get pulled at 70 pitches in the middle of the third or fourth inning. And that's his night because that's how the Dodgers do things. And so I have concerns with him from a value perspective for cash games. I have concerns with him from a ceiling perspective in GPPs. His ownership, you're not getting like too much of an ownership discount on him, it looks like right now. So he's kind of, I don't know. I don't have a lot of interest.
Yeah, I think I'm out as well when it comes to Dustin May. And like maybe it changes if the lineup is like super right-handed heavy. He's very good against righties. He still doesn't have that like get out pitch, I think, against lefties is the easiest way to say it. Like he can generate ground balls, he can generate soft contact, he can strike righties out. He has those good pitches to righties, and it's really fast or sinker cutter for him against righties. That really is good for him. But Woodruff going up against San Diego, the San Diego lineup, obviously they're starting to get healthy. Woodruff is always somebody that like I like to play, but you look up and down this lineup, there's not a ton of strikeouts in this lineup, and they're a team that's patient. They walk, and Woodruff is a guy that I always worry about pitch count. You have anything to add for Woodruff?
It's pretty much what you said. Like there are pitch count issues. He's facing a good offense in the Padres. You're not getting a discount at 9K. I think Woodruff's fine. But on this slate at that price, I think there's probably better options. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, even on a 6-game slate, I'm with you. I think there are better options. For tournaments, this range that we're about to get into, the Bundy, Duffy, Gausman, I even think Joe Ross is interesting. You kind of talked about these guys already, but like looking at tournaments and looking at Joe Ross, am I crazy for thinking he's an option here up against St. Louis and this pretty right-handed heavy, lineup?
I'm not a huge Joe Ross fan in general, but it does look like he could be making some changes this year, maybe being, maybe becoming a better pitcher than he kind of has been the last few years. It's not like I think St. Louis is an especially, challenging lineup to face. I think he's fine. It's just more the price than anything else. Like 8K for Ross, I'd probably rather just spend 9K for Woodruff. You're not getting that much of a discount there. I'd rather pay 8.5 for Jack Flaherty, pay the extra 600. But if Ross is, right now he's projected as the lowest owned guy on the slate, so he's certainly a way to be contrarian.
As far as Dylan Bundy goes, I said on the podcast, he's my favorite tournament pitcher on the slate today. I love this spot for him. Texas has some power, but they strike out at such a high clip. There's even like Garcia's in there, and like we've seen him be already like a boom bust type of guy, strikeouts and everything. I think this is a great spot for Dylan Bundy, 7,700. Pitching at home against Texas, like I think this is a great spot for Bundy, and he's thrown over 6 innings in all 3 starts this season so far.
Yeah, my biggest concern is that it is a home run park. It is the hottest game on the slate. There is wind blowing out to center field. So there is legitimate downside here for Bundy, but there's also legitimate upside. And he does project well from a raw points and a point per dollar perspective.
Yeah, like, Gausman obviously going into Philly. He's somebody that can rack up, but you kind of mentioned Danny Duffy and you're a little worried about the strikeout upside. It's not that typical like Tampa lineup. And I'm a little concerned with that because we know Danny Duffy's a dude that when he's on, he's fantastic, but when he's off, he's horrible. So like, I think that's the easiest way to say it, right? Like if you're playing Danny Duffy in tournaments, you should have a couple hedge stacks for the Tampa side because you can get either guy any day, and it's really unpredictable when it's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else from pitching here? I think, just kind of looking through, I don't think we play Sheffield or any of these Chase Anderson, Fleming, these guys. I'm sure we'll get questions about Flaherty. Do you have any interest in Flaherty?
I think Flaherty in GPPs is totally fine. Like he's a very talented pitcher. It's not an amazing spot, but on a short slate, I think he projects well enough. I think he's going to be low enough to own where you can definitely think about playing some Flaherty as a way to be different. I don't like him quite as much from a point per dollar standpoint as Duffy, Bundy, Musgrove, Gausman, all these guys. But as like outside of that tier that it seems like, the ownership is kind of congregating around, I think Flaherty's a good way to be different and access plenty of upside.
All right, let's move on to catcher. Start us off. What are you thinking here at the catcher position?
Yeah, so I mean, catcher is always gross, but Will Smith, I don't think we have a Dodgers lineup yet, but presumably,
not yet.
What's that?
Not yet, not out yet.
Not yet, but presumably Will Smith is going to be in there, possibly hitting cleanup, which as a catcher is a big deal. Going to have the platoon advantage against Sheffield. I think in general tonight, you thought the Dodgers would be like the most popular team. I like the Angels just as much, maybe a little bit more, but I do think the Dodgers they're the Dodgers. They're in a good spot, not especially high priced, a guy like Smith. So 4.7 for him against Sheffield. I think he is certainly a good play. I think you can also go cheap if you want with some of these guys. Like Tom Murphy is 2.5K all the way at the bottom. It's not like I love picking on Dustin May, but you can punt. Murphy has a little power. He's cheap. He's totally fine. Kurt Casale, again, not awesome, but he's 3K. And he's facing Brett Anderson, who's one of the weaker pitchers on the slate in one of the best home run parks on the slate in Philadelphia. And so, and Anderson is a reverse splits guy, so that'll help a little bit with Casale. So I think you're going down if you're not spending up to Smith. You can maybe throw Francisco Mejia into that mix. Duffy, we said, can get blown up. Duffy has a wide platoon split. So righties against Duffy in particular, you can certainly exploit him. He can certainly give up home runs.
Yeah, I think if you're paying up, especially like on FanDuel, people hate playing catchers on FanDuel, but Will Smith is so cheap on FanDuel. I think he's an excellent like play on FanDuel to like include into your Dodgers stack, and like he helps make it work because of pricing as well. I actually like the idea of paying up for Salvador Perez today too. I hate paying up for catcher, hate it, but I think Perez is somebody like sneakily has like 5 home runs on the season. He's a guy that has shown power against lefties and righties, so you don't really have to worry about like who comes in from the Tampa bullpen. So I think Salvador Perez is somebody that's interesting. But yeah, if you're paying down, just whoever's the cheapest, whoever. Like that's how you have to punt catcher. Like the catcher is such a high variance position anyway, And if you're gonna punt, just punt. Like, play the cheapest guy. Who cares?
Yep.
Like, I don't think you have to punt catcher today for what it's worth. And like, I'm team punt catcher to the max, but I think today's a day that you can actually get some decent catchers out there. And like the Tampa catcher's in there too, and he's pretty cheap. Mejia, I think he's another guy you can look at 3,100. Like, I think he's in my like main build right now.
Yep, I like him. Like I said, Duffy has that wide split, so a guy like Mejia, who's a decent hitter, I think is a good play.
Yeah, that's kind of it. Nothing else for catcher, right? Like,
no, that's kind of
more than enough time for catcher.
Yep.
Before we move on to first base, RG Premium right now, 5 days for $5. We're running this promo back. You guys can take advantage of it. This time it's for NBA, and it's April 23rd, so take advantage of it today. They're doing a great job over there with NBA, continuing to crank out great content, continuing to adjust to the news every single day. So if you guys want to check that out, I'm sure Devin's going to post a link here in chat. But yeah, make sure you guys are checking that out. First base, there's a guy that I'm probably going to be playing in all my teams today. Do you want to take a guess who it is?
How are you going to be playing on all your teams? Is it
both on FanDuel and on DraftKings?
Is it Ohtani? Because that's the guy that I like the most today.
No, I have him in the outfield right now in my current build. It's Brandon Belt.
That was going to be my next guess.
Like, it's ridiculous that he is this price. Like, I get it, and like I understand that he's off to a slow start this season, but Brandon Belt is a very good hitter, and he has amazing upside. And dude, he's 3,400. I think he's 2,300 on FanDuel. Like, this is the spot where we're playing Brandon Belt. Like, first base is a position we usually like to get home run upside, but like, we have home run upside at 3,400 in Philly as a lefty. Sign me up.
Yeah, I love Brandon Belt in general. I think he is exceptionally underrated. He's just a good hitter. And it's been masked for years by, Oracle Park or ATT Park or whatever it was called at the time. But he is a legitimately good hitter. He's got some power. This is a great park for power. There's some pinch hit risk. They've been pinch hitting for him a decent amount this year. But even when you consider that, he's still, outside of Ohtani, the best point per dollar guy on this slate. Like, this is a good spot. It is way too cheap of a price for him. So I like Belt a lot, actually.
I like the Giants a lot. Where you guys are going to hear, like, I have a lot of love for the Giants today. Just kind of throwing that out there. You mentioned Ohtani. Ohtani is a fantastic play. You can play him at first base or in the outfield. If you're playing over on Super Draft, I really like Jared Walsh. He still has a really high multiplier over there. Just kind of staying with that theme. The Angels are a good play today. This guy that's pitching Ahara, he's not going to throw the ball by anybody. So you're going to hear a common theme about that as well. Outside of Ohtani, outside of Belt, what else are we potentially looking at here for first base?
We mentioned it at catcher. Like, Duffy is exploitable by right-handed hitters, especially right-handed hitters with some power. Yandy Diaz, not necessarily a power hitter, but he's hitting leadoff. He's 3.5K. He has that platoon advantage. So I think Yandy Diaz is a good play. I think Evan White at 2.9K against Dustin May. Like, I think he's fine because he's, okay and he's cheap. Who else? Really, I just think Ohtani and Belt are like far and away the top options here. Like, Arihara is getting so lucky this year. This guy is just straight trash. He's striking out 4 batters per 9 innings, and he has a 3 ERA for like some crazy reason, and that's just not going to continue. He didn't miss bats overseas. He's not missing bats here. He's going to start walking batters eventually. He hasn't walked basically anyone yet this year. I think he's issued 1 walk. But when that reverts to like a normal number and he starts giving up more hits and more home runs, and he's just going to start getting shelled. And tonight is, I think, the spot where he really starts getting shelled.
Yeah, you have Profar batting leadoff at 2.8K in this game, but I think you're using him more in the outfield than you are at first base. He is solid. Marmaleos is cheap as well against Dustin May. That's another lefty that can take advantage of Dustin May's weakness. Nate Lowe is interesting for tournaments if you're not playing Dylan Bundy. That's the type of guy that, especially in LA, that you're looking for that home run power. So Nate Lowe is another guy that, you could definitely throw into some tournament builds here. Moving on to second base.
Rhys Hoskins too. Like I think definitely stack some Phillies tonight with some ownership on Gausman. So Hoskins would be a part of that for sure.
Second base. Start us off, Derek.
Second base is disgusting. Second base is so bad. There's not a single good, legitimately good second base play tonight. And so I'm being drawn towards Matt Carpenter, and that doesn't feel good at all. Because Matt Carpenter is just, he's not the guy he used to be. Very sorry to our good friend Dave Potts, but Matt Carpenter is not a good hitter anymore. But he's 3.1K. He's in this pretty good matchup here. It's a pretty significant park upgrade getting out of Busch Stadium. Joe Ross, again, I think is one of the weaker pitchers on this slate from a true talent perspective. And so 3.1K for Carpenter at a gross position, I really don't think is terrible. You can also, I guess, go Hanser Alberto. He's hitting 5th tonight against Fleming. He's fine. But there's really not a lot to like at second base tonight. It looks like Fletcher is maybe going to be the chalk or a popular guy tonight. As much as I love the Angels, David Fletcher's not a good hitter. He's just not. He has no power. And for DFS purposes, home runs are where you get the most points. So no power for Fletcher. He's just not a good hitter. And he's too expensive, I think, for who he is. Feels really gross, but I think I'd rather play Carpenter.
Yeah, I don't even see a pay up option at second base. I guess your pay up option is probably Whit Merrifield if you're going to go that route, or Chris Taylor. But I think Chris Taylor is too expensive. I think if you're playing Chris Taylor, it's probably more on FanDuel than DraftKings. But yeah, I don't know if this is a position that, because we have Cronenworth there too, even though he's facing Woodruff. I think Cronenworth is probably better than Fletcher in this price range. If you want, LaStella is probably okay. But yeah, I think, man, I hate playing Matt Carpenter. So I'm looking to pivot off of Carpenter with any of these guys in this range, to be honest.
Yeah, the LaStella issue is they have been pinch hitting for him like crazy this year. I have to go and make sure that this number is actually right because it's so high. The Bats' projected pinch hit risk for LaStella is 68%. That is insanity.
That's not good.
No, it's not. So keep that in mind if you're going to play him. But
it's not good at all.
Yeah. On FanDuel though, I'd rather play Rengifo batting 9th for the Angels than I would Fletcher. Tommy Edman, even though he's 5'2" on DraftKings, he's 2.9 on FanDuel. So he's a good value over there. Dylan Moore, at second base, even against May, I think is fine over there. But second is gross tonight.
Yeah, just kind of looking through. It's definitely a position that's gross. Might play Cronenworth. I really might just play Cronenworth. Batting second, Woodruff. We'll see. On the third base side of things, I think third base is a position that you can definitely spend up on. I really like Justin Turner. I think a lot of people are going to like Justin Turner. On the contrarian side, I really like Kyle Seager against Dustin May. People are going to be so scared of Dustin May. And then, if you want to save some money, you have a couple of those guys like Hunter Dozier, Alec Bohm, even the dude from the Dodgers. I can't think. Is it Nooser? Yeah, he's minimum salary at third base, and he's definitely going to be popular today.
Yeah, there's a good amount of ways to go at third base today. Like you said, Noose. He's the top point per dollar guy. I don't know if he's strictly necessary, but you can certainly play him. Hunter Dozier with the platoon advantage against Fleming. I like Alec Bohm. I mentioned liking Phillies. I think he is underpriced in a really good spot today. Jose Rojas against Arihara. If he's in the lineup, he's fine. And I think Evan Longoria, you've mentioned some of these giants. You mentioned liking Belt. Longo's another one of these guys who's old and boring, but is just better than people think he is, especially when you put him in a good home run park against a guy who can give up home runs. So I like Longo quite a bit.
Yeah, I like the Giants a lot. That's probably like my favorite bet today too. That game's almost a pick'em game. I really like the Giants in that game. I think the Giants beat the Phillies today. So there you go, Tony. You always ask what my favorite bet is. I'm the Giants today is my bet. Sure, that's a question that we have in queue. If you guys have any questions, always feel free. Devin's taking them down. That's kind of it, right? Like third base it really just depends on like it's one of those positions you can kind of fill in last because you have top end options, you have bottom tier options, like wherever it kind of falls with the lineup that you're building. If you're not stacking like a third baseman, that team, like this is a position you can kind of fill in last because you have options all the way through. And somebody just mentioned that Brock Holt has amazing BVP. So I know Derek Carty is super excited to play Brock Holt here.
Yeah, I'm gonna give that one a hard pass. I'm not playing Brock Holt for any reason, especially BVP.
No, I like BVP, but I'm not playing Brock Holt. So Brock Holt was good. What 5 years ago? Decent. I wouldn't even say good. Decent.
Really had like a high BABIP for like half a year, and like people liked him or whatever. But I've never thought much of Brock Holt.
Shortstop. Shortstop's is interesting position because it's always a position I like to pay up for, Derek, because when you look at like Seager, Turner, Tatis, it is such a huge fall off from like those guys to the bottom tier guys. What are you looking at here as far as shortstop goes?
Yeah, the problem tonight is that Seager, Turner, Tatis, none of them are in good spots. Seager's lefty against Sheffield. It's Sheffield, but it's still lefty for a guy who costs almost $6K. Turner is righty against Flaherty, and Flaherty has wide splits and is one of the better pitchers in baseball. So like that's a tough spot. Tatis is against Woodruff without the platoon advantage, and Woodruff is one of the best pitchers in baseball. So it's tough for me to justify spending up on them. I think even though I generally do like spending up at shortstop, I think going down to a guy like maybe Paul DeYoung makes sense tonight. Getting the park upgrade, facing one of the weaker pitchers on the slate, only 3.8K. I think he's a guy that makes a lot of sense tonight. Outside of that, like there's not a lot to love. You can make a case for Brandon Crawford, with the Giants. You can make a case for, I guess, Willy Adames, if you're doing a Rays stack. Jose Iglesias is a way to, I guess, be different with your Angel stacks. He's fine point per dollar, but shortstop, short slates, I guess in general is just kind of hard. Like you don't have a lot of guys to love. So DeYoung, I think is kind of the guy for me that sticks out the most as like the most obviously like good underpriced play.
Yeah. I love the fact that he's going to be popular because I'm probably just going to play Brandon Crawford in my Giant stacks because it always seems like if you don't play Brandon Crawford in your Giant stacks, he's the one that hits the 2 home runs. So I really like Brandon Crawford. I think he's super interesting as a pivot. I think it depends on the site that you're playing on because like on FanDuel, the Dodgers are so cheap that it's really easy to make, or the Giants are so cheap that it's so easy to make like a Giant stack with the Dodger stack. So you could play Corey Seager. It's a lefty, and nobody's going to play Corey Seager, especially at his price. So Corey Seager is a great hitter. And if you like the Dodgers and you think they're going to score a bunch of runs, Sheffield's not going to pitch deep into the game anyway. So I think Corey Seager is like the tournament play up there, but I think like you have to kind of look at Seager and Trey Turner, but I think, you nailed it. If you want to go cheap, there's plenty of options down there as well to kind of go cheap with. And like I said, I think Brandon Crawford's probably my favorite just because I'm going to stack the Giants and he's just kind of in that mix. So that's it for shortstop. Nothing else really, right?
No, I think that pretty much covers it for short.
Do you know the Red Sox are dumb? Mookie Betts is facing a lefty tonight, and I'm still very, very tilted that Mookie Betts is in a Dodgers uniform and not in a Red Sox uniform. But anyway, let's talk outfield. I think Mookie Betts is the best player on the slate, but I think Mike Trout is the best hitter on the slate or the best hitter in baseball, and he's facing a terrible pitcher. So, like, I think this is a day you try to get one of these top 2 guys in there.
Yeah, I think you have to get one of them. For me, I do think Trout is the priority. I love Mookie Betts. I totally get why people love Mookie Betts here, but even though Mookie Betts has the platoon advantage, he is facing a much better pitcher in Sheffield than Trout is facing in Arihara, and obviously Trout is the better hitter to begin with. So for me, I think Trout is the move here. I think he's better than Betts, but obviously Betts is awesome too. I think Harper on the high end is a really interesting GPP pivot, especially in like as a part of a Philly stack. I think he's going to be really good. Joey Gallo, I think, is really interesting here against Dylan Bundy. Like we mentioned, Bundy gives up home runs. Joey Gallo will have the platoon advantage. This is one of, if not the best hitting spots of the night in terms of environment. It's the hottest game. It's the only game over 70 degrees. There's, it looks like right now, 7-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to center field. So I really like just this whole game in general. Part of the reason also why I like Trout more than Mookie. I like Justin Upton at 3.7K in that game. I like Gallo. Who else are we looking at here? I like David Dahl, for the same reasons as Gallo. I like Dahl. We've mentioned liking Phillies quite a bit. Andrew McCutchen is usually underpriced, and I like him quite a bit. AJ Pollock with the Dodgers is definitely a good value tonight. I like him. Yeah, I mean, outfield is the one spot tonight where I feel like there's too many good plays. Willie Calhoun in another Ranger. Willie Calhoun's a good play. Mickey Moniak is 2.2K for the Phillies tonight. There are legitimately good plays here. Manny Margot hitting cleanup with the platoon advantage against Duffy tonight is too cheap. So there's a lot of ways to go here.
Yeah, if you want to Soler, he's obviously super interesting on this slate as well.
Soler.
Love Mookie Betts, like I said.
Yeah.
I love Yaz. This is the guy. I know the upside, and again, I'm very, very high on the Giants. So again, I'm going to be playing a lot of the Giants today. He is going to be very low owned on DraftKings today, and I love it. As far as that goes, as far as Yaz goes, because when you're just looking at it on FanDuel, he's 3K, and Yahoo, he's $13. He's going to be really popular on those two sites, but it's not going to translate into DraftKings because he's 5,200 over there. So I really like Yaz. I think he's a great option to kind of pivot, but I think outfield is a position that nobody's going to fault you if you play 3 expensive outfielders and save some money at other positions today, because there are so many great options at the top today. Yeah, there's great options at the bottom. Dickerson, Upton, Soler. You mentioned Willie Calhoun. There's plenty of plays towards the bottom, but man, the expensive outfielders today, it's really hard to you can go Ohtani, Betts, Yaz, and save at maybe third base and catcher or something, and still get plenty of options, and make your lineup unique, because usually people will play one cheap outfielder. So I do think that's definitely an interesting way to approach it for tournaments. But in cash games, I think you're going to end up with an AJ Pollock or a Willie Calhoun type of play. I even think Soler is potentially cash game playable against Fleming.
Yeah, I think he's certainly in the mix.
Any more outfielders? Margot's cheap too. There's so many outfielders today.
Yep, I think Margot's fine.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, we're going to answer questions here for the next 10-15 minutes. So we'll see. We'll see if anything kind of changes. We're waiting for a couple lineups to come out. Seattle just came out. It's Haniger, France, Seager, Marmoleos, White, Torrens, Trammell, Moore, and Crawford. So pretty much what the projected lineup was. Does that change anything for you as far as Seattle or Dustin May is concerned?
Probably not. Neither one is really on my radar. I think they're kind of just one of those games that's just on the slate, but there's not a whole lot to like from it. I mean, I guess outside of the Dodgers offense, obviously, but May or Seattle, I don't have a lot of interest in.
All right, let's get into these questions. Devin's been taking your questions. If you guys have questions, we'll have plenty of time to get through all these questions. Again, appreciate you guys over there on YouTube. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully we'll give you guys some winners today. Do you think paying down at SP2 is going to be different today?
No. I mean, what else are people going to spend on? You know, people will pay for Musgrove. Are people going to pay for Dustin May or Woodruff or Flaherty in these like not great spots? I mean, I guess May's in a great spot, but you know, with the leash and everything, I think you're going to see a lot of ownership on the Bundys, the Gaussmans, the Duffys, those type of guys.
Yeah, and like I think that if you want to be different, you pay down at both SP, like both pitchers on DraftKings. Like,
yeah, that's a way to do it. Just skip Musgrove entirely.
Yeah, like because we both don't love May or Woodruff because it's more pitch counts than anything else for both of those guys, honestly. And like the Brewers bullpen is so good that they're so quick to yank their starters. So I think like if you really just want to be different, go like Bundy, Duffy, or Bundy, Gaussman, or Duffy, Gaussman, or Ross. Like there's 4 options down there. You could just be different playing those guys.
Yeah, I don't even hate Flaherty in that mix. He's more expensive than those guys, but he's still, going to differentiate you from the Musgrove people. There's like a 2K difference there. So I think there's plenty upside with him.
Eric wants to know, is there any GPP love for Joe Ross?
I know you liked him a little more than I did.
Yeah, it's more of lineup. Joe Ross is good against righties, and he has been, ever since he's kind of been fighting injuries and stuff. And like, really, I don't know if we've had a full season of Joe Ross yet, have we? I think like every time, he's gotten hurt and stuff like that. I always get him and Tyson Ross mixed up, but I don't think we've had a full season. I know we didn't see him at all last season, but if we're taking a small sample size and just kind of looking at this year, his stuff looks great. He looks like he's a guy that can pitch into rhythm, and he's generating ground balls. So I think against the St. Louis lineup, like Goldschmidt and Arenado is a really tough like 2-3 combo, but the bottom of this order stinks. So I think I think he's somebody, and like they're not a team that's going to steal bases and stuff on you either. I think they're one of the worst teams as far as like stolen base ratio and like ratings. So I think Joe Ross is interesting for tournaments. So yeah, that's all. Moving on, FanDuel single entry. Do you eat the chalk with Musgrove, or do you get off the board with bats, or get off the board with bats, or what SP GPP do you like the most? That question was hard to read. So I guess it's asking in single entry GPPs, do we play Musgrove with different bats, or do we stack Dodgers with a different SP?
I think you can do it either way. You can make a plus EV lineup with either approach. If you play Musgrove and he's going to be chalky, you need a stack that is contrarian or off the board. If you play a cheaper SP, well, now you can play a chalkier stack or a chalkier mini stack. So, there's no right answer to that.
Yeah, like again, like I'm playing the Dodgers, Giants, and Bundy on FanDuel right now. That's my main build. There you guys go. Figure it out. If Chase Anderson is reverse splits, why did Gabe Kepler stack the San Francisco lineup with left-handed hitters?
I don't know. Managers aren't known for their smart tactical decisions. Kepler is one of the more progressive managers in baseball, but he's a former player. Managers in general make bad decisions. That's what they do.
Hot take. I don't think Chase Anderson's good against either side of the plate.
I don't think he is either. I think he is better in a relative sense to one side than the other, but he's pretty bad to both.
Yeah. Like if you look at his 2020 numbers, and again, 2020 was so short and all that stuff, but like he was bad to both sides of the plate. And like this ballpark's not a great ballpark for Chase Anderson. Chase Anderson's a guy that gives up a lot of hard contact and a lot of fly balls over a long period of time. So this is not a great ballpark for Chase Anderson in general. So I don't know. Let me call him up. I'll call him up. I'll call the skipper up, and we'll see what he says. But Tampa Bay stack looking sexy tonight. Do you agree?
I'm fine with a Tampa Bay stack. You know, of the non-Musgrove guys, like it does, at least right now, our ownership has Duffy, Gaussman, Bundy as the next three pitchers. And I think it is totally fine, even though I like those three pitchers, I think it is totally fine to have a stack against any or all of them. I think I prefer Philly and Texas over Tampa, but I really think you can do any of them.
Yeah, I think Tampa's okay. I don't think I like the other side more. I don't think Fleming is particularly somebody that I'm scared of. So I like the other side a little bit more than Tampa. But listen, that's a way to get different. If you're on the Tampa stack, don't let us talk you off of it. Take a shot. DK, GPP, or even cash. Is pool host a good way to be different while still trying to get some angels?
Not for cash. Definitely not for cash. In GPP, sure, you want to make your angel stack different, like go right ahead.
Thoughts on Chris Taylor?
He's a player for the Dodgers.
It's a solid thought.
I don't have any like super insight into them. Like we like the Dodgers tonight. They're a good team. Taylor's a guy on the team. He's not one of their better hitters. Like maybe he's a way to make your Dodger stack different. I don't know.
This is a guy that is so smart that he made a amazing model, and that is his answer.
I don't know. Like, it's just like a vague question. Like, what are my thoughts on Chris? I don't know. Like, what are my thoughts on Chris Taylor? He's a Dodger. We like the Dodgers a little bit.
Yeah, and like the problem with Chris Taylor is his price on DraftKings. It's just way too high. Like you're not playing Chris Taylor over Ohtani. They're the same price. And like I get that they're different positions, but like that's just the kind of guys that you're like stacking them up to. Chris Taylor, you can play him in the outfield as well. Like I guess if you're playing a Dodger stack, you play Chris Taylor over Ohtani, but you're not just playing Chris Taylor over Ohtani.
Right. Like the price is too high for who he is. I guess that's what my thoughts are. But if you're doing a Dodger stack, like go for it.
Yeah, I like Chris Taylor. Like I think he's solid. He's a lefty masher, Derek's favorite thing. But like just kind of looking at this price range, like give me like Kyle Schwarber against like Flaherty. Like there's so many guys that I think in this price range work better than Taylor today. Like sure, if you want to play up and play him at second base, I think that's where you play him because of just looking at the second base position. It's kind of weak, but I don't think you play him in the outfield today. There you go. That's my thoughts. Do you have a favorite captain play for the St. Louis Washington Showdown contest? I haven't even looked at that.
I haven't either.
I'd take Joe Ross. There you go. Best low owned outfielder on DraftKings for GPPs.
Let me look at some ownership here because there are a lot of outfielders to like. Are the Rangers really going to be as low owned as we have them projected at right now? Because like Willie Calhoun he projects right now as the top point per dollar outfielder, and he's projected at 3% ownership. Mickey Moniak, 6% ownership. David Dahl, 4% ownership. Dylan Carlson, 9%. Soler, 6%. Those are some guys, I guess, that I would be looking at if those ownership rates are going to be right.
Yeah. Soler at 6 is probably my favorite. Again, I've talked about that game a lot. I don't think there's any reason that he's so high or so low ownership wise. I think he's somebody that definitely should be in there.
Joey Gallo at 6 too. Ranger stacks in general I like tonight, especially given the leverage off Bundy.
Yeah, I don't hate it, but I like Bundy a lot, so I do hate it kind of. I was just trying to be nice to you.
I like Bundy too. Like it's okay for both to project well. Like Bundy projects as right now, I think the optimal cash game pitcher, and the Rangers project as like the second or third best point per dollar stack because that's how the pricing is. And because Bundy's range of outcomes are very wide. Like he can get blown up very easily. We have seen that happen many times.
Do you think what's worse, the range of outcomes for Bundy or Danny Duffy?
Pretty similar. I'd prefer to stack against Bundy, I think, but you can, like I said, you can stack against Bundy, Gaussman, or Duffy. Totally fine tonight. I think that is a smart thing to do in GPPs.
Just kind of following up on the Chris Taylor thing. What should Taylor be priced in our opinion? I like when Chris Taylor is under 4K.
Yeah, that's about right.
And like I like Chris Taylor, and I don't think he's been under 4K at all this season, but If he was in like that 4,200 range, I'd probably have him at second base today.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to make it work, especially if you're trying to pay up at outfield. Again, I don't think Chris Taylor is a bad play. I don't want that to be like, we love the Dodgers. We love the Dodgers for a reason. Let me see. Oh, any interest in the Kansas City stack today?
Not really, no. Fleming's not a terrible pitcher. It's a good pitcher's park. It's the best pitching weather. If I'm playing a bad offense today, I'm not playing Kansas City. I'm playing Texas. I'm playing St. Louis. Maybe I'm playing. I don't consider the Phillies a bad offense, but I don't think they're going to get ownership tonight. Not really on the Royals.
I think if you're stacking the Royals, you kind of look at that like that 3-4-5 stack because it's really cheap. You go, well, Perez is expensive, but Soler and Alberto are so cheap that like if you go Perez, Soler, Alberto, it's super cheap to make that stack work overall, even with Perez being super expensive. And then it gives you a secondary stack that you can play with a top end stack. And all three of those guys are in play. And
Dozier's fine too. I think you're right.
Yeah.
As a secondary stack, I think they're okay.
But like Whit Merrifield, he's a great play. He doesn't strike out against left-handed pitching. He's a very good hitter against left-handed pitching. And he's just so expensive. It goes back to that conversation, when we were talking about second base, that it's really hard to pay up at second base today because it's just a position that sets up as a punt position, really. Season-long question. Would you trade Blackmon and Corey Seager for Trout?
Yeah. It didn't. I don't know. It depends on the format. Depends on your replacement options. Probably, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I would personally.
Actually, I probably wouldn't. I don't think I would.
As much as I love Trout, like Corey Seager is so good at his position, and Blackmon gets to play half his games in Coors.
Yeah, I think there's a decent chance we see maybe a Blackmon trade mid-year. But I think you are giving up a little too much there.
Yeah, but even if he gets traded, he's still likely going to bat leadoff. He's a leadoff guy, so.
Yeah, but he'll be like a league average hitter hitting leadoff or something.
Listen, Derek, you just don't trade Corey Seager, okay? All right, we're going to rapid fire. We got about 5 minutes before we get out of here. I think that is when we get out of here. Stack Tampa, Texas for all the money, question mark?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, especially Texas.
Is News playable at 2K?
I don't think he's necessary in cash, but he's certainly playable in your Dodger stacks as just a way to be different or free up some salary. Like, that's fine.
Let's see. FanDuel, Trout or Ohtani? Is that a real question?
I mean, it's Trout, but they're both awesome. The real answer is both.
Well, the real answer is you never play Ohtani over Trout. You can play both. You never play Trout over Trout. Does the Bat X think Danny Duffy goes over 5.5 strikeouts today?
Let's take a look. It has Duffy at a little under 6.5. So yeah.
There you go. Derek, do you think Gausman Bundy combo is viable on DK cash to pay up for bats, fading Musgrove, or do you need Musgrove in cash?
I think fading Musgrove in cash is too cute. I think you play Musgrove, but in GPPs you can fade him.
DK single entry, is Duffy okay with the wind blowing in?
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to help him.
Yes, that is going to help him. We already answered the Taylor question. The Bat X likes Renifo at second base, but Fletcher's leading off. Your thoughts?
I mean, I said it before. Fletcher is straight garbage. Like, him and Rengifo are basically the same caliber of player. But the only difference is that, they're one's hitting first, one's hitting ninth, and there's a price gap. Like, it's not a 1-for-1 swap. You're saving money with Rengifo. If you look at Fangraphs at the Bat X's Fletcher projection, he projects for 0 home runs the rest of the year. When I say he has no power, I really mean like the Bat X thinks he has no power. He does not hit the ball hard. He doesn't hit it in the air. It just doesn't like Fletcher. He's a below average hitter, same as Rengifo. Take the savings, I guess. That's what that's how I interpret the bat today with that.
Contrarian builds against high-owned SPs. Should they only be 3-man stacks? I think, I'm guessing this is obviously a tournament question. I was pulling up ownership again. So like looking at projected ownership, we see like a massive amount of ownership to like Dylan Bundy and Danny Duffy. I think if you're going to, and Kevin Gausman, I don't think I fully stack against Musgrove because I think the Brewers lineup is trash. But I think like any of those other 3 guys, Gausman, Duffy, or Bundy, you can 4 or 5-man stack against any of those 3 guys. If they're just not on, they're not on.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
That's it. That was the last question. We're going to get out of here. We got crunch time coming up. Kevin Roth going to be talking about the nudist colony that he's in and probably some weather. Meansy going to be breaking down the NBA stuff for you guys. Remember, $5 for 5 days with the special promo that we're running right now for NBA Premium. So guys, check out that. And then Cheese is Good is on there as well. And he's going to talk about Matt Carpenter and he's going to have a rebuttal for Derek Carty. He is Derek Carty. I'm Stevie TPFL. Make sure you guys check out the bat. And that's going to wrap it up here for Monday. See you guys again tomorrow.